Hello, my name is Bob. I was born in the 1950s. I grew up in the Midwest. I lived in the Midwest for my first 30 years of my life, and then I've been in California for the past 30 years. My parents moved from the city to the suburbs, which is where I grew up. I went to a predominantly white school. It was probably 90% white. We had a few minorities, just a couple of African Americans, a few Hispanics, and a few Asians, but it was 90% white. I don't really think so, but I never really thought about it until someone asked me. Um, I grew up in a middle class family. My father worked. I went to a public school. I went to college and paid for my own college. Didn't get any scholarships, didn't do any loans, and I got a job. And I don't feel like I really benefited from being white. When I tried to get enrolled in the school, they wouldn't let me in because I was overweight. So being white didn't help me there. I also saw many people in school that were there because of affirmative action. And as a result of that, they were taking remedial courses. They had lower GPAs, they had lower SAT scores. So that made me feel like, well, I worked really hard to get here, and these people got here because of their race. And at the time, we were going through a big change. So later on, I understood that as affirmative action. In my work, I noticed when I got a job there, most of the men there that were engineers all had degrees in engineering, where other employees who were of minority or female were there and they had liberal arts degrees or no degrees at all. So that seemed kind of, I don't know, that didn't seem like white privilege. I don't feel like I've been taken advantage of people of other races or taken advantage of white privilege, but that's just my opinion, and I guess that's all I have to say.
Hi, my name is Deborah and I'm 21 years old. I'm from Portugal. It's a little country in Europe. The majority of the population is white. So for me, I don't really understand what white privilege is. I see it as privilege given to white population. I have not dealt with it in my life, I would say. I grew up in a country where the majority of the population is white, and I feel like everyone was treated equally. I've never had my race be like the determination of any of the situations I've been in. So I've been living in the U.S. for 2 years, and there are a lot of differences between the two countries. Starting with the size of it, we're not even 11 million. The diversity. I've actually never been so reminded of my race since I've been living in the U.S. So although my country doesn't really have a big diversity compared to America, there is diversity. I just don't feel like I've never noticed racism or discrimination as much as I do here in the U.S. I did go to school with a lot of people, black people, Asian, and I've never noticed the difference that I do feel here. I keep getting reminded that I am white, which in Portugal, like, we all treated each other, the same. Like, your race doesn't really influence anyone. That's something that I have to deal with here, and I'm learning how to react and respond to it, because I feel like people assume certain things about me for being white. They assume that everything, is all pretty colors for me, and they don't really know. So at work, I don't feel like my race influences how I'm treated, not even by my boss or my coworkers. I think we all treat each other with respect. With regards of noticing that customers ask for my help specifically sometimes, I'm not sure whether it has to do with my race. I kind of see it as, me being more open and friendly and they responding to that, but it could have to be with my race since the majority of customers that we get are actually white. No, I don't think so because I don't see myself that way. I don't see that race influences my life that much. I try to live more based on my culture and who I am as a person, how I was raised. And so my dad actually grew up very poor. He used to have to wait in line for free bread. And right now he has a really nice paying job, and it has all to do with hard work. Like he studied hard. He moved away from where he was born to go to the capital so he could get better job opportunities, and he grew from there. And I don't see it as race having an influence in his growth, because the majority of the people in our country were actually white. So there's no really other, to privilege anyone else. And so for me, it's all based to do on how you are as a person and how you, if you work hard, if you are a good person, I guess.
I'm Jessica Hill. I'm 21. I grew up in Utah. My definition of white privilege, I think it's basically kind of how our society is set up, so that people who are like European ancestry are at an advantage from other races. And I think it's super prevalent because, just looking through history, the Europeans kind of took over everybody and definitely set up laws and governments so that they'd be on top and they'd stay in power. And I definitely think that still has an effect today. I think so, just because I feel like our culture in America is like similar to the European culture. So growing up, I grew up in that, my family's culture is the same as most of society's culture. So I kind of know the ins and out, how to talk to people with authority and how to kind of use the system to my advantage. But if other people didn't grow up in that same family culture, they're not going to be at such an advantage. Just white Americans are definitely in positions of authority a lot more often than other races. So I think that definitely benefits me, and it's a disadvantage for other people. I wouldn't say that I'm particularly treated differently, except when I talk to my coworker who's Asian American. She just talks about all these instances where people have been super racist to her, customers and things. And I've never experienced any of that. I've worked in fast food before, and I worked with a lot of customers in public, and I've never had anybody question or be rude to me and race it or base it on my race. But from what she says, she definitely has in a lot of instances. I think that maybe my eyes aren't as open to that because I don't receive it as much, but I can definitely see other times where people of other races could absolutely be treated poorly. And I think people who are white just don't see that, and so they aren't as open to accept that racism still exists.
Hello everybody, my name is Byron. I am 31 years old. I was born and raised in California. I have a bachelor's degree in business administration from a California public university. As I understand it, the idea behind it is that people who are white, people who are from a European descent, are privy to certain privileges, benefits that are not given to people who are not white. I started working when I was 17. I'm 31 now, and in that time I have had bosses and managers who were male, female, white, black, Hispanic, Asian, all kinds of European. So in terms of who I've seen around me in the higher positions of work, I have seen no evidence of white privilege. I can say very confidently that I've had more non-white managers than white. As far as my experience in work, I can tell you that even though I am a white male, getting a job for me, I still have to send out 100 resumes a week and call endlessly and just hope for a callback and hope for an interview just like anybody else. And I have certainly never had a boss come up to me and say, "Hey Byron, you're white. Here's your white privilege check." It just doesn't happen. You and me and everybody else has the same opportunity to go where we want to go and get what we want to get. It says that just because you are poor, just because you are non-white, that doesn't matter. You will have the same opportunity to go to college that I will. You go and you take the same test, and if you perform well, if you perform better than I do, doesn't matter what race you are, you're going to go instead of me. That's equality of opportunity. Equality of outcome looks at the end result. This end result needs to be equal for everybody. The way that equality of outcome works, if you look at a workplace, for example, they would want to see an equal division among all races in that workplace. Regardless of who's qualified, regardless of who's best, none of that matters as long as it's equal for everybody. I don't believe this is a particularly good method to look at the world. It ignores the underlying principles and causes of why certain groups are more benefited than others. Why is it that more Asians go to college? I don't believe it's because they're any inherently smarter than anybody else. Why is it that fewer blacks are going to college? I don't believe it's because blacks are inherently less intelligent. I don't buy that. I don't believe it. But until we can take a step back and actually examine the core reasons why these groups are performing differently, we will never get to the root cause, and we will never be able to fix the actual problem. And things like the concept of white privilege are counterproductive, because white privilege is a way to silence anybody who is white, anybody who is not a minority, by saying you can't possibly understand because you're white, which of course just reinforces this whole idea, this whole concept that race is still somehow important and that we all need to keep talking about it